Commercial banks are usually the best places to borrow money. They specialize in lending to established businesses and individuals for medium-length periods. Their administrative costs are relatively low, and they provide a wide range of financial services. There are many sources of loans. Maybe you can get an interest-free loan from your parents, or a low-cost loan from a non-profit credit union, or a subsidized low-interest loan from General Motors as a sales inducement. But where do most persons go for a loan? Correct. You learned from the previous two programs about credit and interest rates, and from earlier programs about living with a budget. Even when you stick closely to your budget, you may need to borrow to even out your supply of money. Open account credit and bank card accounts allow you a limited source of borrowing, but they may not be sufficient to meet your intermediate term needs. And for longer term needs, you will go to a bank or savings and loan firm. What are typical longer term needs? Yes. In the past, however, many borrowers considered banks somewhat forbidding institutions, and the often more convenient and informed consumer finance companies have been the source of smaller loans for many higher-risk borrowers. Such consumer finance or small loan companies do not offer savings or checking accounts or perform many financial services. Which of these do you think would usually provide the lowest rate loans? Yes. A nonprofit credit union is often associated with a major employer and may occupy the same building. Because of its low operating costs and the reduced risks of dealing with members who are company employees, a credit union may offer the lowest available interest rates for borrowing. They may also accept deposits and pay dividends. As you will learn later, some life insurance companies build up cash reserves and allow borrowing against them at relatively low rates. Besides banks and insurance, what is another agency with rather low rates? Yes. Savings and loan companies or associations, as well as mutual savings banks, primarily make home mortgage loans, and until recently offered savings but not checking accounts. They now sometimes make mobile home and home improvement loans. The major automobile and appliance manufacturers, such as General Motors and General Electric, have sales finance companies which allow their dealers to arrange financing along with the sale. Which of these would you guess are sales finance companies? Right. Items such as guns, watches, cameras, and guitars are often called pawn. What is the name of a combination second-hand and loan shop that takes high-risk loans and charges high interest? Yes. Sometimes you are urged to accept a no-interest loan from a friend or relative. It's hard to get better terms, and you may decide it is necessary. But you should be aware of any potential problems and write up an agreement stating the terms of the loan. Let's consider a bank loan. You need to borrow $1,000 for 12 months, at the end of which you are due a big payment from an estate. What kind of loan would you make? Yes. The loan would be for $1,000, bearing interest at, say, 16%, and payable by a single payment of $1,160 in 12 months. This is the simplest kind of loan and bears simple interest. A note is a written promise to pay someone a certain sum or sums on a given date or dates. It must say, "I promise to pay." But legal notes by licensed lenders must say a lot more. Why? Of course. The lending laws are long and detailed and are designed to protect you. The sales contract, besides specifying the terms of repayment, when, how much, and to whom, should provide for early payment, late charges, a separate security or collection agreement, insurance requirements, and should define default. Early payment or prepayment of the entire note is usually permitted using the sum of the digits method, so you don't have to pay unearned interest. There may be a slight charge, however. You will likely be allowed to make early payment of any balance due using the sum of the digits system, sometimes called the Rule of 78. This is because the sum of numbers 1 through 12, 1 plus 2 plus 3, and so on, is 78. What is payment of a loan before maturity called? Yes. The Rule of 78 works like this. If you wish to repay a 12-month note after 4 months, you would owe the lender 12 plus 11 plus 10 plus 9, or 42/78 of the total finance charge. And if you wish to pay off or prepay a 12-month installment note after 10 months, you would pay all but 2 plus 1, or 3/78 of the finance charge. What is this procedure called? Yes. It's true that this Rule of 78, or sum of the digits procedure, has you pay a little more interest than is actually earned, but it is intended to cover the administrative costs of early payoff. The sum of the digits procedure for prepayment may also be used for loans that are longer than 12 months. It's still called the Rule of 78, but for a 24-month loan, for example, the sum of 24, 23, 22, and so on is a lot more than 78. A commercial bank provides many more services than personal loans. It has several kinds of savings accounts and certificates, issues traveler's checks, and serves as one credit reference. What is a bank's principal service? Yes. In fact, checking accounts which drew no interest were special features of banks until recently. Now savings institutions permit withdrawals much like checks, and banks pay interest on some checking accounts. Another distinctive service of banks is local business loans. While you may not run a business, you may in the future, even if it is only a part-time business. Banks will lend money for worthwhile and sound business purposes. They may make short-term loans based on accounts receivable, the money that customers owe the business. What other security do you think businesses may use for loans? Right. A loan on inventory of goods for sale at retail is sometimes called floor planning, since often the goods are displayed on the sales floor. An important factor in personal and business loans is inflation. While debtors in one respect benefit from inflation, it often causes high interest rates. High costs are the result, and this can make a home or car harder to sell. What is a slang expression for this problem? Yes. Borrowing, when used properly and prudently, has an important place in personal finance, just like drugs in the practice of medicine. But just as a potential addict must avoid abusing drugs, you must avoid taking imprudent risks in borrowing or with your credit. Every year, thousands of individuals and families find that they cannot possibly pay the debts they've accumulated. What's the word describing their condition? Yes. Often bankruptcy results from unforeseen events, and often it results from events which were unexpected but could have been foreseen as possible and protected against. Bankruptcy may be declared in state or federal courts, preferably with counsel from an attorney, and it provides protection from creditors. But before debtors decide to declare bankruptcy, they should explore ways of meeting their obligations, even at some sacrifice. Another concern is overdrawing your checking account. This may occur because you failed to note a check on your stub, or your spouse didn't tell you about a check in a joint account. What may then happen to embarrass you? Right. But checking accounts are important and useful. They are insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and provide a safe way to pay bills. What else do they provide? Yes. Of course, your money draws little, if any, interest in a checking account, so you would benefit from having your extra money in a higher interest-bearing deposit. But be sure to leave enough to cover your checks. It's so awkward to pay unexpected amounts in cash or to cover checks returned for insufficient funds that most persons plan to keep a moderate balance in their checking accounts above budgeted withdrawals. A small town bank can often be friendly and helpful, but a big bank with many branches can be convenient in the city. Some banks charge a set service charge or fee per check. Others offer free checking with one requirement. What do you guess it is? Yes. It's usually easy to open a checking account, fill out a form, and sign a signature card. If you wish a joint account with your spouse, provide both signatures. In most cases, then, either of you may write checks. This is important if either account holder dies, since it avoids probate delay. Your bank checks will have your bank and account number printed in magnetic ink at the bottom so a machine can recognize them. What kind of machine performs such rapid data processing? Yes. If you fill out your own deposit slips in advance, you will save banking time and may be able to use a remote deposit. If you intend to deposit your paycheck, you may wish to endorse it for deposit only after your name for safety. Learn to use banks effectively. They can be useful throughout your life.